Good afternoon. Welcome to the Winter 2026 Meet the Candidates event. We're very happy to have you all here. We're here with our three board candidates, Anne McGowan and Bill Jasper and Sharon Lykins. This election is to fill 2 seats on the board of directors that are being vacated by Kevin Donlin and Sherry Gallagher. Yes, I knew she was in the room. And we are recording this session as so many of our members are non-resident and unable to join us live. So this video will be made available tomorrow and up on our website so that our members can view it at their leisure. Thank you, Anne and Bill and Sharon, for being here today and your willingness to serve this community. It's fantastic. Before we get started, let's talk about a little election reminder. This is my PSA for you. So the voting will open this coming Monday on January the 12th at noon. We want to have the staff here. We want to be ready to help if there's any issues. So we open at noon on Monday. It goes until February 12th at noon also. Why so long? Governing documents require 30 days. So sorry, I can't make it shorter. There's 1 ballot per property. If you happen to own more than 1 property, we will combine your votes to a single ballot and you'll receive that on Monday. A paper ballot will be mailed to you if we do not have an email address for you, and you will receive all of the same election information by US mail. So we need 51% of all of the participating votes in order to meet the quorum for this election. Please vote early. Please save me the heart attack of the last week of voting where we panic whether or not we're going to make quorum. So please go in, get to know your candidate and vote early and save your staff that pain and torture. Your candidates have provided written statements. They've done video interviews for you. That's all available on our website. So you have lots of opportunity to get to know them. And today we're just going to have a conversation with them. Hopefully we'll catch a lot of topics. We'll get to hear their perspectives on different things. So we're so happy to have you here. We're going to allow them to introduce themselves to you. And we've asked them to limit their comments to 3 to 4 minutes just because we want to get in as many questions. I'm going to start with you, Anne, if you would introduce yourself to the group.
Okay. I'm Anne McGowan. I've lived here for 3 years with my husband, John. We moved here from Charlotte. We were looking for a place to spend our next 20 years and someplace beautiful where we could be outside, where we could be close to an airport to get to our family that hopefully will visit us here. And at the end of our search, found there's no place like KICA for all of those things. Who I am professionally, I'm trained as a lawyer, but I immediately started moving a lot in my late 20s, early 30s, which I think gave me a graduate degree in what I call community building. When you're a new person, as any of you know, in a community, you kind of have to just jump in. And I did that in every place we moved, from California to the mountains of North Carolina, to Atlanta, to Charlotte, ultimately here, to be of service to the community and to also just become a part of the community. I think the only way you can do that is to get out and meet people and make connections. I ultimately ended up my career by founding a strategic planning organization for nonprofit clients. I think that makes me a good facilitator. It also has enabled me to pursue my love of research and fact finding, and also to talk with other people and get their perspectives in order to come to find common ground. I'm sort of a problem solver. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions today. And if there's anything we don't cover today, please feel free to reach out to me on that email.
Thank you, Anne. Bill?
Okay, I'm Bill Jasper. First, thank you everybody for being here. I think it's important that you hear what we have to say, but I think it's also important that we hear what you have to say. So get a perspective of what's really important to everybody. Been here since 2017, a full-time resident. My career was spent through a whole series of businesses in DuPont, as well as Unify, which is a company I ran for about 9 years. Like Anne, I think this is the most wonderful place in the world. The quality of life here is better than anywhere I've ever lived, and this is where I plan to spend the rest of my life. And I've been asked why I want to run for the board, and sometimes it was a sarcastic question. Other times, why do you want to do this? You know, I think one of the primary objectives of the board is to improve the quality of life here, and I think that's a very, very important objective to have, and I'd like to provide my energy, expertise, and experience to help do that.
Thank you. Hi, Sharon.
Hey, I'm Sharon Lykins. I'm really excited to be here. I also just kind of want to start out saying thank you for making the time to be here, because especially whether you're here in person or whether you're joining us online, you know, between family time and work and everything else, to come to a session like this, it's a big deal. It takes a lot of planning to plan your time around it. And so I hope that the session is valuable to you. And I hope that at the end of the day, that we give you the confidence that no matter which of us end up joining, that the board is going to be well served. So let me just start off with that. And then to say, I won't waste your time by reviewing my candidate video. But what I will tell you is that, you know, like the others, we fell in love with Kiowa. It was love at first sight. And ours was in 2008. And we came year after year after year until we finally just have to buy. And so we bought our property in 2020. And so we came back and forth from Spartanburg, and now we actually live here full time. And when you live here full time, it brings things more into focus. You become more aware of the issues that KICA faces and what's going on the island. And as I became more aware of the issues that KICA faces, I started realizing that I actually have a particular skill set that I believe is well suited to the current issues. And that's a little bit different than what some of the other board members bring to the table. And so just to kind of clarify that, I spent 30 plus years, understanding, engaging with groups to understand what their needs are, and then developing products and processes and systems to meet those needs. And so I think that a lot of what we're facing today could be well served with some of those skills. What do I mean by that? Take the issue that we hear a lot about is transparency. I don't think that there is necessarily an unwillingness to be transparent, but I do think that when you go to the website, for instance, that we do need an update in the format and the functionality of that site. And I think there's some things that we can do to make it more user-friendly. When you go to make a payment on your account and you have to log in and then you have to log back out because Aunt Mary's coming next week and I need a gate pass. And now I have to log in to get a gate pass, and then I have to log in a different place to make a yoga reservation, or any of those kinds of things that we're looking at. I've had experience with user facing technologies that could help some of those processes. In addition, you're talking about research. Well, my whole job was research, and while the surveys every year is great, there are some things, other tools and methodologies that we could use to get even more robust data to help us with decision making. And so again, when I saw what a lot of the issues that are facing the board right now and my particular skill set, that's what made me say, I think I could be of some help. And whether it's on the board or whether it's on a committee, I still think that I could add value. And that's why I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you, all three of you. And your candidates are so good, they ceded most of their time to you. How about that? So let's talk about, we're going to move into this next phase. This is your phase. This is the Q&A portion of the event. We have three types of questions. We're going to take questions from our in-person audience. We're going to take questions from our online audience. And then we had questions that were submitted prior to this event. They're here in the bowl of fun. They'll just be randomly selected. We'll rotate through this cycle for about the next hour, and we'll end with closing remarks kind of right around 2 o'clock because we want to respect your time and our candidates' time. To ensure we hear from as many members as possible, please try to keep your questions clear and concise. There's no follow-up questions. This isn't a debate. This is an opportunity for each candidate to present their viewpoints on each question that's asked. And we'll rotate through who answers first. For those who are here in person, please raise your hand. We'll have a microphone brought to you so that we can ensure that our online audience can hear you. And for our online audience, if you would raise your hand electronically, my executive assistant, Ellen, will call on you in the order that she receives the questions. And each candidate will have about 2 minutes. And I got a phone over here. About 2 minutes to give their viewpoint on the question because we want to get through as many different topics as we can so that you have a really good feeling for each of our candidates. So we're going to start in the room. Lucky y'all. If there's somebody who would like to go first to ask the first question, just raise your hand. Oh, come on. You all are not that shy. I know this group.
Okay, I'll take. Okay.
All right, there you go. Thank you for being the first one.
Okay, my name is Stan Peterson. I live on Boomtown Pond Road. I'm a new resident of Eagle Island. I was asked the candidate, it's a little confusing for us new. With Toki, I know there's a Toki here, and KICA. Is there a better way to work together so it's more consistent? What Toki is doing and what KICA is doing.
Thank you for your question. It sounded like there was a little feedback on his question, so I'm just going to repeat it quickly for our online audience. He's asking about the differences between KICA and the town and being a new member and trying to figure it all out. And are there ways that we can work better together, communicate better together for the benefit of the membership? Correct. There you go. Anne, you're my first victim.
Well, this is something I feel very strongly about, and I think collaboration amongst all of these entities and stakeholders on the community is vital to a fully functioning day-to-day operation as well as planning for the future. We are overlapping constituencies, overlapping interests. At the end of the day, I think specifically Toki and the board of KICA want to have almost the same mission. We want to maintain and enhance the quality of life for residents of Kiowa and preserve and enhance property values. In order to do that, we can't operate in silos. There's been, in the past, as I understand it, a more formal and regular and consistent meeting of the minds amongst the various players, particularly Toki, KICA, the partners, the resort. And then beyond that, conservancy and regimes, I think all of these stakeholders' interests are important to note. But of those primary four, there used to be a more regular meeting. And I think that I'd like to facilitate that going forward. I don't think you can get anywhere without understanding the perspectives of others, whether it's a KICA member or a town council person or the resort, which still owns a lot of property to develop, or the partners, which still have some property to develop and obviously are invested heavily on Kiowa and will be going forward as well. So I appreciate you raising the question because I don't think there's anything more important than intentional and meaningful and regular and consistent collaboration. Personalities are going to clash. At the end of the day, I would like to see that be set aside and actual productive conversations occur so we can meet those common needs and address the same constituencies in a way that they see there's grownups in the room, they're working on this, instead of petty disagreements that result in people reverting back to their own silo.
Thank you. Bill?
I guess the first answer to your question is, it seems like the maze of case, because it is quite complex here. We have several entities that are all managing different aspects of our life here. I'd have to say, I've been here for about 8.5 years now, and the collaboration between the town and KICA is much better today than it was 7 or 8 years ago, and there are several different reasons for that. I think if you look at some of the big issues that are being dealt with right now, the gate policy will be one that I'll point out. Every one of the stakeholders here has a stake in that, and it's going to be very, very important, not only that we just communicate, but that we negotiate productively amongst ourselves, because everybody's going to be affected by that. I think ultimately, and I think in the past, I'll pick the 4 main entities, the partners, the resort, KICA, and the town. I think in the past, all of them have had pretty much the same objectives around quality of life on the island. I think for the partners, that may be diverging a little bit now as they complete their build out. I mean, certainly the partners 10 years ago when they're building on the island, quality of life is very, very important as a sales tool. As they finish their build out, I suspect their priorities may be changing a little bit, but I think it's going to be very important that the resort, Toki, and KICA work together very collaboratively to assure we maintain the quality of life here, the designing with nature, and all the things that make Kiwa a great place to live.
Thank you, Bill. Sharon?
I think going back to what both have said about just making sure that we're in the room together, that we're talking about the issues together, making sure that Toki is in the room when we're talking about the issues around the ARB, when we're talking about quality of life issues. There's nothing like being face to face and having conversations together to take you out of those silos. And I think as long as we make sure that that's occurring, that's the best thing we can do.
Thank you. Ellen, do you have an online question? And Bill, you'll be first if there is an online question.
We have nobody online.
Oh, and it's the bowl of
No, there
fun
are
for
people
you.
online, there's just no.
It's okay. They're good questions.
I have a question.
We'll ask in just a second. That's your next person back there, back row, Sandy Devine. All right, you're getting a question on financial stewardship. What would be your key priorities when considering the annual KICA operating and reserve budgets?
Right? Take her question.
Would you like a member of our finance committee in the third row to answer the question for you?
Well, there's a lot of different aspects to the budget, obviously.
Absolutely.
Which are
You can
very,
just
very,
narrow in
very
on one.
important. Certainly one of the questions that keep coming up, and this may not be the most important one, but it's certainly one that I'm hearing a lot about, is amenities and what are we going to do to build out amenities?
Right.
And I've heard about a covered pool. We've all heard that one. I promise you. And as well as many other things. And I think when you start looking at adding all of these amenities, you've really got to understand what's the cost going to be? How many people is it really going to serve? And is there better ways to spend that money to serve more of the community? So I think as we look forward into the capital budget, really making good judgments as to how to best use the limited funds that we have is going to be one of the most important things around our budgeting and our financial stewardship. That's how I'd answer that.
Perfect. Sharon, how would you answer the question? Any priority?
Well, this may sound a little bit different than how you may traditionally think of budgets. But the way I see things is it all starts with your staff. And to make sure that you can retain good staff and make sure that you're taking care of your people. So my first thing would be take care of the people who work for KICA, because if they are happy, they will take care of us, the guest. If we're the guest, we're the membership, we're the guests that they serve. And so if we take care of them, they will take care of us. So that would be my first thing. And it may seem small, but it's actually where things start. And so if you take care of them, then you can use their intellect and their experience also to help solve some of the issues. And then you go into that research piece of understanding what are the real needs. So we hear about the pool. Well, is that a small group of people that, and it wouldn't serve the larger good, or are we not necessarily hearing from the larger population because maybe people are busy and they don't fill out the survey, or maybe there's another way to talk to the membership to understand what they need, and that is a financial obligation or a financial undertaking to expand your research abilities, to really understand what are the drivers so that you make the right decisions. So it might sound a little bit flip-flopped from what you may have thought about it in a way you may have thought about it, but those two things to me are the most important, so you understand where you want to go, and then you can make a really great plan to get there with the budgets.
Thank you. Anne?
I'd like to defer to the member of
To
the
the
Finance
member
Committee,
that happens to be your
who happens
husband
to be
in the
my
third
husband.
row?
So I do hear,
No, John, no.
I do hear a lot about the finances of KICA.
Sorry.
It's absolutely crucial. I would say it's got to be a top priority that we continue to have a strong financial stewardship, best practices, a great team that manages it, and I mean the volunteers as well as the staff. If you look at our finance committee, it's kind of a pretty high gold standard of, my husband excluded maybe, but.
Nope, he's in there too.
We are fortunate on the island to have the benefit of experts that are volunteering their time and those on staff who are diligent and mindful of the present needs of the island as well as the future. Amenities, I think, is a top priority, absolutely. I agree with Sharon, more substantive and robust member input on that kind of investment is going to be crucial. Relying on our financial stewards to tell us what is possible and what may be possible and what isn't possible is another thing. I think emergency preparedness would probably be my top priority. We live on a tidal island. We have a bridge over a tidal river, which of course the town manages, but is obviously of import to the rest of us. But flood mitigation that KICA manages so well and continues to evaluate and improve upon. I think emergency management, management of those emergency contingencies is critical in my mind to what our finance group does. That said, I don't find much fault right now. I think it's very, the methodology is sound. The investments are good, and it's most importantly continually reviewed to make sure that that's the case. None of this is static. So I appreciate that our staff and our volunteers are aware of that.
Thank you. See, you did fine without your husband. All right, Sarah, I think you're going back to see Sandy. And Sharon, this question's coming to you first.
Okay, well, hopefully it's not the.
Just as kind of a case history or a case study, so to speak, one of the issues that has been top of mind for KICA, I believe, top of agenda has been the gate policy. Bill, you mentioned it. So I'm curious what each of your thoughts might be about the gate policy as it stands today. What is what you would consider to be the most positive aspects, how you might have approached it differently from a process standpoint. And it's fine to say nothing, that you would support or do support kind of the process that was executed. But it's an issue that does touch all of us, has multiple dimensions. I think, the board took kind of a stepwise approach, which, when you have a big, hairy problem, you take it apart and you do that. But I'm curious in terms of kind of your perspectives on a very topical issue.
Thank you, Sandy.
That's a very good question. And as you said, it is one of those topical issues that you become more aware of when you actually live here. And so I actually think that the way the policy itself is drafted is pretty good. There might be one or two things, that we could talk about, but for the most part, I think the policy in and of itself is fine. I think now it comes down to tactics and how are we going to enforce those policies. And that's where I think some of the financial investments can go to technology to help with that. And not just technology for technology's sake, but technology that can grow with other issues that we don't even know about that are going to inevitably come up. But for instance, in previous life, we had a corporate platform that was able to talk to lots of different platforms that don't actually speak the same language, but we did that through a cloud format. And I think if you use something like that to address the gate policy, it could also go into some of the things that we talked about with the website also. And also you could do some things where if the sanctuary were to have a guest get a reservation, they make a reservation, and immediately upon that reservation, it starts a process for a gate pass that then also shoots out an email to that guest that does some things that we might not have thought about, like sending an email to that guest that reminds them of all the wonderful things that we do with our wildlife preservation here and why it's important not to have flashlights on the beach at night and all the things that we all find very important to the tranquility and the peacefulness that is Kiowa Island. If you invest in the right technology in the beginning, it should be able to connect and do a lot of those things. So I see it more now as a tactical issue, and how are we going to make all of that feasible to enforce?
Thank you. Anne?
I think it's crucial, and you mentioned that it touches on all sorts of different aspects, security, traffic, parking, safety. I've followed the development of the policy and have reviewed the final one that was passed or adopted in December. I'm supportive overall. The devil's in the details now. The implementation is going to require as much intention as what we've seen go into writing the actual policy. Technology is going to be critical. It exists. We live on an island, but this exists outside our island, and other communities have been able to address the technology aspects of it. That's going to be crucial. It's also going to be very important that we avail ourselves of expertise in how this is implemented and how we go. If we remain with 2 lanes, how can that be done the best possible way? If we're able to expand to 3 lanes or 4 lanes, what's the best way of doing that? There are experts off of this island that I think can provide a lot of input. That might be an area of investment for our financial stewards to consider. Traffic. When I think of traffic on this island, I think it's too easily dismissed that it's only at certain times of day or during certain parts of seasons of the year. The people that are in that traffic day in and day out are significant economic drivers to our community. There are employees, there are contractors, there are service providers, there are guests. That can't be minimized, and I think we have to, as KICA, see that as part of our purview to serve those people as well. I could go on and on about the gate because I do think it's critical. I like the way that KICA has invited input. I think that members have had a lot of opportunities to provide input. I think that the conversations, the proactive conversations with the town, with the resort, with the partners are evidenced in the final policy. At the end of the day, does it please everybody, all of those constituencies? No. You can't set the bar that high. It's simply never going to satisfy everybody. We have 2 lanes coming into this community. There are always going to be some issues associated with that squeeze point. But I think we've made significant progress. And if I get on the board, I'd really like to be a part of stewarding that to completion over the phased-in period that they've set out right now, and maybe adjusting it as needed.
Thank you. We'll put you in the MS Teams team on the gate access policy implementation, the whole thing. Hi, Bill.
Okay, I must say, going last, it's difficult not to repeat a lot of what you
Sure.
heard, because I agree with a lot of it. We've got, at least for me, there's 2 main issues with the gate. One is the traffic, especially during high use times. The other is people getting onto the island that aren't supposed to be on the island. And I think the new policy, as it's been laid out, is a good start to deal with that. There was something in there about potentially having a place where you can get passes not at the gate. I think that would be a really big improvement. I think, like Sharon said, a lot of this can be automated. And, I've had these conversations with people, why can't you just, if you have a reservation, it shows up at the gate, maybe you get your pass by email and you just print it out and go through. And the response has always been, well, yeah, but there's places like the Ryder Cup bar that don't take reservations. How do you, you don't want to hurt the resort and not allow them. And, there are ways to deal with that. I mean, one thought I had is you charge a gate fee for people who don't have reservations, and they get it rebated when they sign their check at the restaurant. I mean, there are creative ways to deal with stuff like that. I think it's good. We're trying to tighten up the gate policy. I think it's also important that we keep a good flow going through, but we also don't want to do any damage to the resort's business either. So it's kind of an unusual situation. You look at the Seabrook gate, and everybody always says, gee, Seabrook has no problem at all with managing their gate. Why do you? Well, we've got the resort here. We've got golf courses here that are being visited by the public. So it's a very complex situation. And I think the board's done a very good job in trying to address those issues in a very complex situation. So I feel good about where we are right now, but I think there is further we can go. I do like a 3rd lane idea. If you streamline the passes, you may not need the 3rd lane, but I still think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a 3rd lane just for residents.
Thank you.
And to the outside consultants or things like that, there are other industries. You think about Chick-fil-A, boy, they know how to get people through.
I know.
Right? So there are,
We can do a Chick-fil-A line.
you think
It'd be
about
awesome.
other industries,
Yeah.
maybe it's not someone in this lane, but maybe it's in another lane that we talk to them. So.
Thank you. Ellen, do you have a question online?
We do not.
All right, Anne, you're coming from the bowl of fun. Bill's already done this. It's the first victim. Oh, this personal question.
Oh.
What is your favorite place on Kiowa Island?
Yeah, the beach.
The beach? All right, that'll be an easy one.
I could leave it at that. I'll just expound just briefly on this. The beach is really where I started to meet people, and that is by taking my dog out to the beach. It didn't occur to me that would be at all that way. I simply had what I call an exuberant dog, and she needed to run. And I went out to the beach a few times, started to see familiar faces, started conversations with people, ended up walking with people, ended up talking with people, ended up golfing with some of these people, ended up, getting together for exercise, getting together for coffee, having dinner. It's extraordinary to me what the beach has opened up for me in sense of being a part of a community. But beyond that, there's nothing more spectacular to me than any day, night or morning on the beach and experiencing exactly what we moved down here to experience, which is the remarkable beauty of nature.
Mhm. Thank you. Bill?
Exactly what she said.
Ditto.
That's how I met
Really,
Bill.
walking out at the beach, going to Yappy Hour at 4 o'clock most afternoons, and just enjoying the sunset at the beach. It's got to be the beach.
It's pretty perfect.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Sharon's going to say the same thing because I've had this conversation with Sharon.
Yeah, it's unanimous. I can pontificate all day about my love of the beach. I'll say, not just during the day, the sunsets you were talking about, to me, I've never seen the same sunset. And I have some friends that had a place in Red Rocks in Florida, and they said, eventually that sunset looks the same. It doesn't here. It's never the same sunset. It's always a different sunset. And I'm a stargazer, and so that is why probably you will hear me over and over and over again say, why are all these flashlights on the beach? Because I'm there and I see them. And so, because that is one of the best times in the summertime. Scorpio is huge, and you can see him all the way across the sky, and you've got Andromeda and Cassiopeia, and all of them are just up there. And I'm so happy that my chair goes all the way back so that I can just see the whole thing. So if you find me ever on the beach at night asleep because I fell asleep doing that, I'm not a homeless person. I actually belong there, and you can just tell me to go inside. But yeah, it's absolutely the beach, no matter the time of the day.
Well, the mayor's here, so he can let Beach Patrol know that you're open.
Yes, please.
All right. Back to the room again. Who has the next question? Just raise your hand. Oh, Brad, right behind you, Sarah. And this is going to Bill. The next question.
Thank you all. As you may know, the town as municipal entity has to comply with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. KICA as a private entity is not obligated to do that. But do you think it would be prudent for the KICA to adhere to the requirements for open meetings and such in the FOIA that the town has, to the extent it can?
Thank you.
Okay. I'm not going to be able to address the legality of the Freedom of Information Act. I don't know that much about it, but I will talk about transparency. And obviously, we've all anticipated that question, I think. So I appreciate it. There are several. I mean, I think the board is probably more transparent than people will give it credit to, but I do hear a lot of complaints about it. And I've had complaints. Anybody who reads IPWA knows I comment there a lot, and I've had a lot of complaints about it. I think the things that bother me or that I think could be improved, I'll start with executive sessions. And I read the new bylaws, and the new bylaws make it very clear that votes in executive session can only happen in 6 different categories, which are typical categories for executive sessions of almost all boards. It also says that the vote has to be announced after, and there's nothing in there which says items not in that list cannot be discussed in executive session, which tells me that other things can be discussed in executive session. My opinion is that, as a general rule, anything that doesn't fall into those categories ought to be discussed in open session. And if they're going to be substantive discussions that are going to be driven to a decision or some sort of resolution, I think those subjects ought to be discussed in open session. I just do. Now, I do recognize every once in a while there's going to be a subject that comes up that does not fall into those 6 categories that would be appropriate in executive session. That's going to happen. If it does, then my feeling is the board should tell us what that subject is. They should tell us why it's going into executive session specifically. And when the session's over, we ought to be told what the resolution was, how people voted, and then maybe it's going to come into open session now for a vote. Yeah, there are other things that I just don't understand quite yet, and maybe I will if I'm on the board someday. I go to board meetings and there's a part of the meeting where people get up and speak. They have criticism or they have suggestions or whatever, and the board doesn't respond. I mean, we just have people say things and either make suggestions or many times have criticism. The board never responds. And I recognize we don't want to have an ongoing debate 6 hours in a board meeting, but on the other hand, I would appreciate to know how the board feels about that. And maybe sometimes we do at a later date when they put a policy out or they respond, but I think it would be very helpful. And it would also improve transparency if we could have some response from the board on these comments when they're made. I would certainly, if I was on a board, want to respond if I felt it was, either it was a good idea or it's not a really good idea, and here's why. I think openness and transparency does two things. It builds trust in a board. Well, not so much in a board. I think we all trust the board. I mean, we've all got the same objectives, but I think it builds trust in the process that the board is using to make decisions. And secondly, when you get a decision from the board, when you understand the back and forth that went on, the different opposing opinions and why the board made that decision, even if you don't like the decision, at least you can live with it because you understand the thinking that went into it. So I said it in one of my, I don't know if it was in the interview or my written statement. I mean, I prefer to over communicate personally. How that relates to the Freedom of Information Act, I don't know, but that's how I feel about it.
The Freedom of Information Act just requires that even speak public and things like that. But I think you addressed the fundamental question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I probably said enough.
Sharon?
More than 2 minutes, right?
So regarding the actual Freedom of Information Act, I don't think that the KICA information needs to be broadly public to the public, but to us, the public that is affected by it and has an integral stake in it. Then yes, I do think that those things should be made available. I think it also goes back to my earlier comment regarding the transparency issue, and that is, I don't think there's an unwillingness to be transparent. I think that there is a formatting issue. I think that we can address some of this with technology. For instance, if you are able to go to the website today, again, you go for your account and then you go for this and you go for that. And then to find anything about the board, I don't know about you, but I always have to go back to my email where the newsletter came out to hit the link to go back to even find the notes. It's just difficult. It's just kind of clunky to get around. And to me, that lends to the perception that there is a transparency issue. I think we could do some things with technology like, and this is very tactical, but like having a tile, a place where all board information is. For instance, the agenda could be placed there a week in advance so that you know what questions you're going to have and be able to get. And then after the meeting, in that same place with that board agenda, the notes can come out within a certain time frame so that you can follow what discussions were had during the board. And then if there is a major proposal to discuss, we could have a forum within that section where, okay, we're going to propose that there's a new bird sanctuary on the north end of the island, or whatever we're going to say, make stuff up. And then you can have a forum where it's very visible. I can go make a comment and say, I think the birds are fine. What are you talking about? And the next person can say, no, this is an issue. And you can follow that dialogue and understand then at the end of the day, when the decision is made to either put it on the board agenda or not put it on the board agenda or make a decision about it, you'd be able to follow all that logic that went into the decision that was made. And you would see visually that your thoughts were heard on any particular issue. So I think it's more of a technology, not that there aren't some things with executive session and things like that, but I think a lot of it could be solved with technology.
Thank you, Sharon. Anne?
I appreciate you raising that aspect of communications. It's frustrated me as well. I'm going to focus in on the transparency issue for my remarks. I've been having conversations with a lot of people on KICA, both amongst these, the 4 major entities, as well as just KICA members in general. And this issue repeatedly comes up. There is a overarching sense, I think, that the KICA board is not sufficiently transparent. I echo all of Bill's really well thought out and well-spoken comments. I'll target a couple of things. We're going to have a new chair going forward in this next term. The KICA chair dictates quite a bit how the meetings are run. I would advocate with that chair that we look very sincerely at our constituents' concerns on this matter and identify ways in which we can improve both the perception and the actual transparency that we effectuate. I think executive sessions are very valuable as a nonprofit executive, and this is a nonprofit. A lot of business happens in casual not business. A lot of information is shared in casual conversations and emails and telephone calls, in confidential memorandums. That said, once that sausage is made and the actual ideas are better formed, I think it's important that the community more broadly be brought into the process at that point to get input and that can be responded to in real time at meetings to the extent that, as Bill mentioned, we're not stretching into 6-hour meetings. Sometimes it might be a simple matter of an issue is raised or a concern is raised about some action that the board is considering taking. And simply a comment by the board that this is noted and we're going to get back to you as an individual, excuse me, to reflect that it's been heard and it has been considered. Doesn't necessarily mean at the end of the day it's going to be exactly as each individual wants it. But as I said before, we live in an imperfect world, and sometimes we just have to acknowledge that the final outcome takes into account the perception, the input and the perceptions of other, and is evidence-based, and we've done the best we can at the end.
Thank you. All right, Sharon, the next one's coming to you. Ellen, do you have a question online, or are we going to the bowl?
We're going to the bowl.
All right. So excited. All right, Sharon, this is on Greater Johns Island growth. Would you be open to the KICA board engaging with Charleston County leadership related to Greater Johns Island growth, traffic issues, and improved infrastructure that impact KICA members?
So I like that question. And for the ladies that were at the meeting the other day that we all sat at, I think you might know what I'm going to say, and that is, yes, I would encourage that. And the reason being, my biggest fear, like I said, we fell in love with this place in 2008 when we first came. Love at first sight. The serenity and the tranquility here is like nowhere else on earth. And my biggest nightmare is that somehow KICA becomes Myrtle Beach, and no offense to Myrtle Beach, they are what they are, but that's not why we came to Kiowa. And so when I look at the greater growth of Johns Island, and all the neighborhoods that are coming and all the traffic that's already there, I mean, it takes, if you are not going to do your grocery shopping at Harris Teeter, and you want to go to Publix, it's 40 minutes to get off the island because of all the growth. And so, yes, I think that I would encourage the board to be heavily involved in conversations to help mitigate some of the growth. Instead of encroachment, I should say growth that is coming on Johns Island. Yes.
Thank you, Sharon. Anne?
Yes, I think KICA should be involved, would be my short answer. I think our involvement would likely come in the form of collaboration with our town officials. The question references the County of Charleston. I think, of course, what comes into play, as well as the state of South Carolina, our partners in government in Seabrook, our partners in government in James Island. So is there a role for KICA in that? Absolutely. Our responsibility to our members would require us to be involved in those conversations. Ultimately, I would hope that it would come in perhaps a liaison relationship with town officials in working with them to craft a Kiowa specific our Kiowa specific input, but it's a much broader issue than just Kiowa. I mean, the growth density on Johns Island, I think it's something like, I know you all can tell me, 20%, 30% greater in the last 10 years, the population growth.
Probably.
And of course, you know, the Johns Island Advocate, if we follow that, which I think is a really remarkable undertaking by a volunteer, gives us a sense that for each thing that each residential development, multifamily home, commercial development, for each one of those things, the infrastructure pain is cannot be dismissed and needs to be considered. And I think that's something that I know our town is already involved in that, but it certainly seems that something that that is right for our input as the KICA board to, at the very least, gather the input from our community, from our members, which again overlaps exactly with the towns, and be a productive partner going forward. Charleston needs to understand that we are different from them. There's a reason that Johns Island is largely rural still, and that's important to the residents. So I would hope we'd be integrally involved.
Thank you, Anne. Bill?
Yeah, I've already heard pretty much everything I was going to say, but, you know, the only thing I'd add to that is I think if you want to look for a terrible example of suburban and urban planning, just look no further than Johns Island. I mean, the housing that's going in is incredible, and there's nothing being done to the infrastructure. So the only thing I would add is, yes, I agree, we should be involved. I think we should be involved with the Seabrook Homeowners Association and any other homeowners association on Johns Island, because if this continues going the way it is, it's going to be a disaster in about 5 years. I mean, I can see it already. It's a disaster now. If you're driving at a certain time of day, I feel like I'm back in northern New Jersey again. I mean, really. So yeah, I think KICA should be involved. I think it should be a fairly high priority in terms of how KICA engages with the outside world. I mean, there's not many things KICA engages with outside of Kiowa. If there are things that we're going to engage in, this is probably one of the most important ones. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
Thank you. All right, we're going to the room again, and this will be the last question to our candidates. Go, Phil, go. And let's see, it's coming to Anne first.
Phil Mancusi and Garrow, and I'll just say 13 Buffalo because I'm so used to doing that. And the first question I'm going to ask you is, who's going to support Miami tonight in the playoffs? This is the most expensive shirt I've ever owned. The question I'm going to ask is sort of a follow-up to one about transparency, and it's something that Anne mentioned and Bill mentioned. When you go to the board meetings, you get an agenda on Friday afternoon. And most of the time, there's not a lot of details associated with the agenda. And the first thing on the agenda is member comments on agenda items. Well, you don't know what the agenda item is other than a line item, because barely does it have a document associated. By the way, the town follows that, but the town under FOIA has to provide all that information ahead of time. So we get up there and we ask questions because we're trying to understand what the issue is. And the response from the current chair has been, we don't answer questions. But sometimes board members will go ahead and answer them anyway. But it's very frustrating as a member to get up there, ask questions, and get nothing back, as you mentioned. Also, to not know what's going to be discussed when there's a line item that's important to discuss, and sometimes they're even voted on. So how would you see it changing the way that the board agendas are issued and the way the board operates?
Anne?
Yeah, it's obviously a really good point, and something that part of me feels like I don't have sufficient operational information as a board member to answer. To the extent that I can provide suggestions. Again, new board chair, new officer slate, things will change. I cannot imagine that transparency is not going to be among the top of the list, because it is so consistently raised, and there are so many valid concerns about it. I am somebody that looks at agendas and then looks at meeting materials, and sometimes that's daunting, right? You look at some of the meeting materials and it refers to long memorandums or a lot of information or different links. Technically, is there a way to do that better? There probably is. That would be something that I think would fall upon the new slate of officers and the board en masse to discuss with staff. I have not been here long enough to know how that has changed over the years. I imagine that it has. We have not yet achieved a state of it being adequate. So if you've got the board meetings, say they remain on Mondays. As a board member, I'd like to have all the information by Wednesday at the latest. So I'm prepared. Maybe it's a matter of timing. I'd also like to provide perhaps, and this goes to Sharon's knowledge and technology. I don't find the online input process for anything on KICA to be necessarily user-friendly. I don't find the responsiveness of KICA to be sufficient to things that I submit online. As it relates directly to the board, I would like to see some way in which we can maximize the efficiency of the meetings by providing some member input prior to that can be maybe addressed then at the meeting as two questions that come up immediately on the spot at the meeting. In defense of current board members, I would say sometimes time is required to digest input, and maybe it's simply a function of saying, I hadn't thought of that, or I appreciate that input, let me consider it. I would be hesitant to require a response, immediate response in a board meeting to every input from member from the public right then, because I don't know that you'd necessarily get the best response, the most thorough and practiced and best response and informed. But I appreciate your point, and I think it is going to be an important part of addressing the transparency issue, is how can we facilitate input, whether it's at the meetings, prior to the meetings, and be responsive to it.
Bill?
Phil, I'm going to answer your question, starting with the question I've been getting, which will explain the rest of my answer. Almost everyone I've talked to says you're talking about transparency. You're going to make the board more transparent. Heard that from the last 5 board candidates. Nothing's changed. And I don't know why that is. I mean, there are things about the process of putting together the agenda and getting ready for the meetings. And let's face it, everybody who's on a board has a life too. It's not just a full-time job. So I don't know what the process is. All I can tell you is that I would do everything I could to try to improve the process so more information gets out earlier so people know what's going to be discussed. I do think what would help is more feedback from the board after the question's been asked. And maybe that means a week later, maybe that means at the meeting, maybe that means a day later. But I think, and I'll tell you one short story, and this is not answering your question, but I still got another minute, I think. You know, I've gone back and counted 10 emails that I've sent to the board over the last 5 years, specifically asking questions. And within an hour, I get a note back saying the board's received your email, we'll respond within 3 to 5 days. And then there's crickets. I've gotten 2 responses, and both of them were by a board member by phone. Both of the phone calls were fantastic. My questions aren't even answered, but I got into a conversation and had a better understanding of it. And that would have been great if I got that with the other 8 too, because it would have given me a lot more information, would have made me feel a lot better about the decision processes. So I really think it's communication and taking the time to communicate. I mean, I think that's what's going to help. But to answer your question, how am I going to make the board more transparent? I mean, others have said they're going to do that, and it doesn't appear, at least on the surface, that it's gotten any better, at least from everything I'm hearing. So, you know, I don't understand the process of how the board meeting is set up, how the agenda is put out, how much time is put into, and you know, what could we do to communicate more about the subjects that are going to be discussed. But probably doesn't answer your question, but I do think more communication back to us from the board is something that would make things a heck of a lot better, and it would make us feel a lot better about, again, the process that the board's doing to deal with the issues that we have.
Thank you, Bill. Sharon?
So not knowing what the process is today on how those agendas get put together, what I can tell you is from a tactical perspective, I've been a part of getting lots and lots of board decks and board agendas together. And one of the things that I would suggest, and we can talk through it, whether it's in this forum or another, but one of the things I would suggest is that the board chair, meet with Shannon at least 2 weeks, maybe even 3 before each board meeting, to see what the agenda might be and to really start to nail down what needs to happen at that next meeting. And then there would be an ability to perhaps put out a draft. Hey, this is what we're looking at for the next board meeting, so that you could start getting your questions together more in advance and give you more time. Maybe that happens a week and a half or 2, maybe it's 10 days before the next board meeting that comes out. And I know I'm getting more detailed and just kind of getting in the weeds, but this is kind of what I do. Sorry. But anyway, it will give you time to really kind of put your thought process together. What we would have to do as a membership is we would have to give the grace to the staff, to Shannon's team, to the rest of the board to say that agenda might change a little bit. Something may come out of thin air that we weren't ready to discuss. Something might have to be discussed at that meeting that wasn't necessarily on the agenda, because stuff happens. But if we as a membership are willing to give the grace to allow things to change a little bit, I think that you could have here's the draft of the agenda that we are planning to discuss, and then maybe the more firm agenda comes out literally a week before. and then the things that come up in the meeting. You know, what gets written gets done, what gets assigned gets taken care of. And it could be a matter of, in a board meeting, there's a financial question and, you know, that person who is over that committee is tasked with getting the answer back within the meeting time. Hey, you're going to get back within 3 days. Oh, wait a minute. It's going to take me a little more time because there's a little more research behind that question. It's going to be it's going to be a week before I can get back to you on that. And that person, when they circle back around, they can put, have whatever that conversation was added to the notes as an addendum or something of that nature. Again, I know I'm being very tactful, but it comes down to those kinds of very tangible things that lead into that perception of non-transparency. So that's why I get into the weeds a little bit.
No problem. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you all. We finished the Q&A section of this. So you survived. It was all okay. So we're going to do closing statements, and we've asked them to keep it to about 2 minutes. They're kind of final statements to you all and to our online audience, and we're going to reverse the orders. So Sharon, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. Well, again, I really do appreciate that everybody that's here and the folks online literally taking the time to be interested and talk and have the discussion. So thank you for that. Also, thank you to the staff, not only for the coordination of today, but also just the support that they gave all of us in getting the videos together, getting the statements out, and just really just being so supportive in that. And I truly appreciate it. Hopefully, with all of the information that you got today, you can make a good decision. And hopefully we've given you the confidence, like I said in the beginning, that no matter who you choose, the board is going to be well served. And with that, I'll hand it to the next person.
It's up to you, Bill.
Well, let me start by thanking the staff also. You've made
Sure.
this process almost painless. It's been,
Almost. I couldn't help you with the Q&A.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I appreciate everyone coming to this show, and I think whatever choice you make is probably going to be a good one. So I certainly look forward to serving on a board if that's how it works out. And I mean, this means a lot to me. This island means a lot to me, and my life here means a lot to me, and the quality of my life. And I'd like to, I've spent a lot of time making opinions on KICA, and thought maybe it was time I finally actually did something about it rather than just pining. So hopefully you like what I do, and hopefully you'll vote for me.
Thank you, Bill.
Can I ask for a vote? Is that?
It's okay.
Is that not appropriate?
It's okay. You're allowed to ask for a vote.
Get me one.
Anne?
One anyway.
Well, I'll echo both of you in thanking Shannon and her staff. The videos only made each one of us look decent because of the younger people that know how to do that stuff.
It was a lot harder for me.
It was.
I told you they were going to help you.
And thank you to this very engaged community. Thank you to the town representatives for being here today. I think for me, that means a great deal. It reflects the engagement. Our members of KICA as well that are here and really don't need to be, other than to show that they are engaged and supportive. And I love that the sense of future cooperation and collaboration, and hope that this gives me to see all of you in the room and all of those watching today and for the next 2 months, next month. You obviously would be well served by any of the three of us. I do hope that you'll vote for me. It's a very meaningful role for me to use my time to have a broad impact to the long-term health and viability of this island that we call home. I said it in my statement, and I'll say it again. My dad used to say that time is to be used and not spent. I would really like to put my interests and my experience, my background, and my passions into the KICA board to help us navigate today, 5 years down the road and 20 years down the road. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who participated. As the candidates all said, we really appreciate you being here this afternoon. Just a quick reminder, Monday, noon, ballot, right? Also, each candidate does have a KICA email address assigned to them. It is available on the website under the voting section. So if you didn't hear a question that you really want to get an answer to from the candidates, you are welcome to email them and find out the answer from them directly. So to Anne and to Bill and to Sharon, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate all of your time today. So thank you.